hello and welcome everybody back to PCDC Motorsports. This is Season 11, round number 7 at Imola. Contrary to what the title may say, working on getting that fixed in the meantime. We have 6 minutes and some change left in qualifying here. Remember, today is a special type of day, a little bit of a different structure to the race format. We're going to have a 10-minute qualifying followed up by a 30-minute sprint race. And then following that, we will have another 10-minute qualifying followed up by a 30-minute sprint race. We have 18 drivers on the grid so far, on board with Conhe at the moment. And taking a look at what these drivers can do. We have yet to have any drivers set a marker time to keep an eye on, but we should have a few of those popping up in just a moment as these drivers come through to set their first hot lap of the day. Everybody out on track right now, and these wet weather conditions will persist throughout the event, I believe, as we have a 52 set as the first time, but a 50.6 set up by Lee Taylor there. Throw him into P1 with Conhe not far off the pace there. And he's in that silver class, just 7/10 off of Lee Taylor. So we'll keep an eye on drivers as they cross the line here. It looks like Stagno Nevada there got into P5. Vornum into P2 at the moment in the Lamborghini. Looks like Dijkstra's flying around as well. Maren Dijkstra was able to cross the line there in the McLaren and toss the amateur driver into P2 for that current division. Now, a nice little tidbit for the day for the pro class drivers is as long as they finish the race, they'll end up on the podium. They're in the top 3 spots right now, and there's no other pro drivers to compete with at the moment. And I'll keep an eye on who's improving right now. It looks like Till Vorman, 5/10 up on his time already coming through. Which portion of the track is this? Sector 2, I believe. Let's get a nice little view of what these drivers are seeing in these wet weather conditions. Not too much spray coming up from the car in front. Still manageable there. Doesn't look like conditions are absolutely treacherous, though the track is saying wet. Not full wet just yet. Or flooded, so that's good. As we head towards the chicane, I can see this being a bit difficult for drivers, especially in the wet. With those curbs, if you hit that corner any bit wrong, you're going to lose a ton of time. But holds on to it for now in that Lamborghini, and 7/10 up going down into the final 2 corners is Till Vornum here. 6/10 up as Lee Taylor has increased that lead that he had up front. It's now 1 second separating Vornum and that P1 position. Let's see how much time this Lamborghini driver can really dish out here. Coming through. Drivers aren't going to have time to box and change any settings here. Not enough time in qualifying unless they can get in right away. And Vornum does improve, but still 5/10 off the marker. Vincent Erbrick here in P2 at the moment, fighting for that P1 position, coming through the final 2 corners now in that AMG Mercedes that we saw absolutely dominate Suzuka last week. Let's see how it fares here in Imola, though. A little bit of a different track setup. Not going to focus as much on that top speed, I suspect, as crosses the line in just a moment's time. And what do we have from Erbrick? It's good enough for provisional pole position into the 49s. It's a 49.6. 2 drivers into the 49 so far. Or no, Taylor's just outside. It's a 150.022 for Taylor. Bunch of drivers improving right now. We see Parnell, who's currently sitting in the top spot of the amateur division, P8 overall, 1.6 seconds off the pace as well, so not too much of a gap there. It's good to see that pace early on from the Aston Martin driver. Kelly Nienhoff here in P9, driving the 23 BMW. A little over a second and a half off in that silver class car. And let's see who's closest to the line at the moment. It looks like Andrew Harvey is coming through nicely here as I look elsewhere. Cohen Hayes up ahead, but not improving. And Lee Taylor's up ahead as well, but not improving on his time. These drivers are still going to be able to get another lap in here. As here comes Harvey towards the line, a second up already on his time. He'll be able to skyrocket up the standings a little bit here. in this qualifying session. Up to P11 there, 2 seconds off of pole position. Let's take a look. Till Vornum crosses the line there, and it's good enough for P3 still. As Lucas Vanderlop will be the next driver to cross and jumps up into P4, and that's pole position right now for the silver class. Look out for Thornton here as well, challenging for that position. There he goes up into P4, and we've had a disconnect. One of the pro drivers, Till Vornum. I believe that's a full disconnect, as I don't see him anywhere on the timing tower. Was in P3, but all drivers are promoted here because of that. Martin Pruka here coming through the chicane. We'll go on board with the Lexus driver for a moment into the final 2 corners. Want to get another view of how this track looks without any drivers in front. It looks, I mean, fairly clear given the conditions. Obviously more difficult than it appears. And passes the pit entry marker. Now we have a couple drivers into the pits. 40 seconds left in qualifying to cross the line and get your last hot lap in. So Pruka was able to cross there. It was 2 seconds quicker, or just under 2 seconds quicker, but invalidated somewhere throughout the lap, so was not able to take that time into the race here. We'll see if he's able to get another lap under his belt, because he was well over 1.5 seconds quicker there. And that would promote him up into competition of around that P11, P12 mark. Kelly Niehoff here improving. The Fanatec-sponsored BMW down the pit straight. Once again here, as we've rounded out qualifying now, and any drivers that did not get across the line before that will be on their final laps. Niehoff has already finished his final lap. And good enough for P6 overall at the moment. No drivers ahead are improving. Peter Parnell seems to be improving right now. Is it enough to grab that P9? I don't think so. It's not. What seemed like a good lap did not end up paying off for that driver. Stagno Nevada here in P14 is massively improving at the moment. You can see the driver behind, I believe, is going to be Pruka there. No, it's Sasha, just behind Sasha Ruppel in P17, looking to improve as well. And there's Stagno Navarra across the line. Grabs that P11 position for the moment. Max Van Laar as well coming through here. Collects the wall a bit. P14, Cohen Hay. He's improving right now. Is it enough to get into the top 3? Sits on the 2nd row right now and might be able to move up just 1 position here, possibly 2 if he has a massive 3rd sector. It's going to be close, though. And through the final corner now, our final driver to bring us through qualifying, sitting in P5 as Vornum does rejoin there. So everybody moved down 1 bit in the order. And here is Cohen Hay. Does he grab that pole position for silver class? He does! At the final moment, it's pole position for Cohen Hay. And we will be live in just a moment for this 30-minute sprint race, followed by what we just saw again. Another 10-minute qualifying with another 30-minute sprint race. So stay tuned for that. Be back in a jiffy. right, hello and welcome everybody back here as we get started on the formation lap for PCDC Motorsports. It's season 11, round number 7 at Imola, and this is race number 1 of 2 for the day. As you can see up top, it's 3 p.m. and a 30-minute race here, but we got wet track conditions, and it looks like wet track conditions for the remainder of the day. On top of the grid is Urbrick here in the Mercedes, the AMG car, taking that pole position up front, seeing what he can do as one of the 3 pro drivers for the day. Lee Taylor here in P2 lines up on that front row in the Aston Martin, and it's Till Vornum rounding out the pro drivers for today's race. On pole position for the silver class is Cohen Hay here in the 888 BMW. P4 overall in qualifying there. Not too far off the pace either, so look for him to be challenging up front in the overall early on, especially in a short sprint race like this. Simon Tunen here in P5, and that's P2 for the silver class. And then number 12, Lexus, followed up by Lucas Vanderlot in P6. Kelly Niehoff here in P7 will be followed up by Chris Thornton. Just behind him is going to be Martin Pruka and Casper Arnold to round out the top 10. Moving into the drivers that qualified just outside that top 10 mark and qualified in pole position for the amateur class is Jasper Van Bergen. Peter Parnell just behind with Matthew Stagno Nevada in P13. P14 goes to Maren Dijkstra here, and it will be Andrew Harvey just behind. Max Van Laar in P16 will be representing the silver class down there, followed up by Paul Kenward, and rounding out the back of the grid is Sasha Ruppel there in the McLaren, silver class driver looking to make improvement from how qualifying went for him. And still rounding through the chicane up front is Vincent Urbrick, but this will be a rolling start here in Imola as we get everything sorted and underway. Marcus, welcome to the chat. I know you guys have been busy on the endurance side of things today, but we're happy to have you guys here as you can stop by and check out what's going on here in Imola. So rounding into the final corner now, or final 2 corners I should say, are the front runners, and it will be up to the green flags to drop to get this race underway in just a moment's time. Hope audio levels are all okay and everything. Yeah, final race next week I believe as well. So remember, we have 2 sprint races today here in Imola. The first of the evening taking off just about now. As of course I decided to start messing with my cameras at this very moment. Never a good idea, but let's go ahead and do it as we're getting set for those green flags to start waving on board with Vincent Urbrick. And it's green flag conditions. We're underway here in the wet race at Imola. First of 2 for today. And you can see those green flags waving. Everybody trying to get underway safely here. We dive into the first corner, and you can see a BMW trying to get up the inside there. Not able to get through just yet. Oh, and we have a driver going way wide there. Looked like a McLaren towards the back a little bit. Up front battling. You can see that driver trying to rejoin safely there. Looks like everything's staying status quo down here, although seems to be a battle between a Ferrari. Is that Chris Thornton, I believe, battling there with a BMW? Not able to get through at this very moment. And, of course, everything gets all jumbled up here through the first couple sectors. But back to the racing up front. It's Vincent Urbrick off to the early lead that he was trying to capitalize on. We'll see as he comes through and rounds out the first sector and middle sector now. Till Vornum hot on the heels, though, with Lee Taylor also chasing him down there. See what kind of gaps we got to keep an eye on. It looks like Taylor's going to have to worry about Cohen Hay behind as well. You can see that BMW really pressuring the Aston Martin already. As you can see, a Lexus going off there as well, being pressured by the BMW of Vanderlot in P6. Chris Thornton able to stay ahead of that BMW there, and there's contact between the Lexus Ferrari and BMW into the chicane. Everybody trying to rejoin safely here, and it's side by side for them, but the Lexus stays ahead of the BMW. That's going to be Tunen ahead of Vendelot. And you can see the BMW trying to squeeze through there. Not enough room on the track for that, though. As back up front, it's still Urbrick leading the way as we look over the rear wing down the pit straight for the first time at full race conditions. It's Urbrick leading the way. He's opened up about a 7/10 gap to the driver behind. And look out, Lee Taylor right now, because Cohen Hay is hunting down the rear wing of the Aston Martin there. And a couple other battles is Callie Niehoff and Chris Thornton getting side by side there. And you can see Thornton was off the track and loses 5 positions, rejoins, and let's see where Chris Thornton's going to be at as he rejoins here. It's going to be down into P12 at the moment. Maren Dijkstra, the last driver to be able to get through, and Jasper Van Bergen is still there as well, fighting with him. So let's see, Van Laar looks like he's competing with the driver ahead as well as being pressured from behind. So sandwiched in between some battles right now is this McLaren, and seeing what he's able to do. I believe started a few places down on the grid, so a nice start to the race for him. At the back of the grid was Sasha Ruppel. He's up at a P14 at the moment out of the 18 drivers we have here in Imola today. Up front, you can see the gap has opened up quite a bit. It's already over a second for Vincent Urbrick out front. I see a BMW pressuring there. Is that Vandelot? It is into the chicane, and that's Tunen just ahead there. And Vandelot trying to get through right now because you can see, there's a Lexus off behind there. And was that Pruka? I believe having an issue in P8 at the moment. It was. Still in P8, though I'm showing the driver behind in P10, so we'll see if that corrects itself. Simatunin here, and P5 will be quickly pressured by Vandelot down this pit straight. And let's see if the BMW driver is able to close this gap at all. As you can see, it's opened up quite a bit there for these drivers, and Vandelot shows the nose a little bit, but just a bit too far back. Looks like Van Bergen and is actually overtaken by Thornton around the outside. It seemed it looked like, I guess they were jockeying for position down here in P11 and P12. Moving around a little bit as we have, is that Ruppel dropping down the order? Tunen up in P5 still at the moment. That gap, though, has decreased to Cohen Hay ahead by about 6/10 so far this lap. And you can see up front, it's still nearly a 2-second lead for Vincent Urbrick just 5 minutes into this race. Go on board with the AMG up front, leading the way here. The 33 car looked absolutely phenomenal last week in Suzuka, and it seems that pace has translated over to Italy. Over 2 seconds now is the gap to Till Vornum behind. A couple names I recognize as well that I've seen around the circuit before, so happy to see a tight-knit community here where you can see drivers racing all over the place, and always nice is Vandelot in P6 at the very spooky number behind Tunen of a 666 as they approach this start-finish line once again. We'll see if that gap is able to decrease at all. We can toss up the live timing, I think, as well. If I can remember the button for it, that'd be amazing. I think it's insert. There it is. You can get an idea of how these drivers are closing in live, but nobody likes that. Everybody likes this one. Yeah, Corey, I agree with that one. I mean, Vincent's looks so quick up front here, and still just under 7 minutes into this race and open up over a 2-second gap now. But as we look further down the grid, it's nearing 2-second for a lot of these drivers. Let's see what battle starts to heat up here, though, as Pruka is staying within a second of the driver ahead. Stagno Navarra, he's off the track right now. And had some form of an issue there in that Aston Martin, but looks to have collected it and get back on track. Not sure. It looks like there's some damage in the front there for the Aston Martin driver. The number 20 car rejoins now in P17, I believe. He will be corrected to just ahead of Harvey there. So Vandelot, ooh, bit of a squirrely incident there for the BMW driver. Collects it nicely, though, and is still hot on the heels of Toonen there in P5 with some phenomenal early battles. Have opened it up a little bit, and without any pit changes, or pit stops, sorry, for today's race, the strategy is going to be pretty even across the board, I would imagine, in terms of fuel and fuel consumption. 3.5 seconds now, the gap to P2, as Lee Taylor actually seems to be closing in there in that P3. So an issue for Vornum, it appears. He was about 0.3 slower 7/10 slower that lap. And you can see Lee Taylor looks even closer than a second behind, but still it's saying just over a second. So we'll see if that battle heats up at all in the moment. How about Maren Dijkstra? How is the McLaren driver faring so far? All over Sasha Ruppel, who's made a nice recovery from the start to be qualifying all the way at the back of the grid and move up 5 positions already. You can see he's the lead McLaren at the moment. And that looks like Parnell behind. Let's go on the rear wing of this McLaren as we get into the twisty bits of the track on the backside here. And different lines for the two McLarens, and I think that's an issue for Sasha as he ran way wide there. And we're going to have a McLaren try and go around the outside, and he does pull off the move. And what an advantageous one at that. A beautiful move promotes Maren Dijkstra up at a P13. And now Sasha Ruppel has to worry about the Aston Martin as well, who's showing the nose up the inside into the chicane, but not going to go for it just yet. There's a BMW in the background as well. That's Paul Kenward in P16. Coming through the chicane. It looked like Stagno Navarra still being hunted down by Harvey as well. Is that an issue for Sasha? So Sasha dropped down behind Parnell. Parnell able to get up into P14, so not exactly the easiest lap there for the McLaren of Sasha Ruppel, who looks to have dropped down the grid a couple of positions. And all the battles right now are over a second, so it's tough to see who's going to take advantage of any driver mishaps around them. Kalle Niehoff in P7 at the moment, chasing down Vandelot. Vandelot, who looked very racy early on with Toonen. It looks like Toonen's answered and has opened that gap up to about 1.5 seconds. And speaking of gaps, still Vincent Herbrick up front, coming through the chicane. Now you can see he's already through the exit as the driver behind is entering the corner. So Herbrick and Vornum, the two drivers up front, opens up a little bit as well down to P3. But remember, Vornum had that issue a few laps ago. Only the top two drivers are into the 49 so far in this race. The fastest lap so far is a 49.2, and that was set by Vincent. And that was actually on the last lap as well. 49.9 was set by Till Vornum on the last lap. So opened up by about 0.7 seconds on that lap. And now 0.8 on this most recent one. So that gap still opening up lap after lap here. And in P9, it's Martin Pruka chasing down Casper for that P8 position. You can see the Ferrari ahead. Not taking a defensive line just yet. Still racing along as he sees fit, but we'll have to soon take a defensive line if these quick laps keep getting put in by Martin Pruka in this Lexus. A 50.8, which was almost a second quicker than Casper Arnold. So we're 6 laps into this race, nearing the halfway mark of the sprint. And the Lexus of Martin Pruka seems to be closing in on Casper Arnold corner after corner right now. 0.6 separates the two there for that P8 position. When there's a little bit of an oversteer there and manages to stay on track and hold it nicely with these wet weather conditions. You would expect a few issues throughout, but the driver is doing their best to handle these cars throughout the circuit. Right now, this is Sasha Ruppel and Matthew Stagno Nevada for this P15 position. Sasha Ruppel has had quite a few battles so far, as we saw him drop down a little bit, move back up, and he drops down again. P15 overall right now. Take a look at this Aston Martin closing in on the McLaren ahead. Is he going to show the nose up the inside into the chicane here? It's a difficult place to make an overtake, but you always have to threaten the driver ahead as there's near contact. You could see the car closing in behind, and it looked like very slight contact. The BMW of Paul Kenward did seem to strike the rear of that Aston Martin. I'm not sure if there was contact, but it sure seemed like there was. The Aston Martin's looking very quick here. A driver dropping down right now, and the Aston Martin's able to get through on this corner. Sasha Ruppel drops down into P16. There was movement towards the top as well. Everything looks normal in the top 9. Max Van Laar in P10. Maybe that was Thornton, who's been involved in some battles early on as well. As there goes the McLaren running wide, and we have the Ferrari getting through now of Thornton. On the exit of this corner, it's going to be the Ferrari ahead, but now it's a drag race down through to the next one, and driver on the inside will have to brake a bit earlier here. But we'll see as they go side by side in the wet weather conditions. It's still the Ferrari ahead and holds on to that position. Gets through on Max Van Laar. A nice, nifty overtake there for that Ferrari to get into that position. You can still see that McLaren having some issue on the front end into the corners. Maybe just over-braking it a little bit. And Kalle Niehoff set to chase down Lucas van der Laat for that P6 position, and it's opened up massively from Toonen to van der Laat as well. So taking a look at the lap times, not too much has changed here. It's all within 2 or 3 tenths for this battle in P6. As on that lap, it was about 7 tenths, and we have now officially hit the halfway mark. The leader, Vincent Erbrick, at the halfway mark, has led from start to the current moment. 8 laps in, and just dominating here. And you can see how difficult it is to control these cars into the corner entries. And on the exit, does a nice job in this BMW to keep the grip and continue on. Max Van Laar here, battling with the Mercedes of Jasper Van Bergen, and trying to do a little switch over was Van Bergen, but not close enough at the moment. Into the next few quarters, though, will be even closer. And following the best he can in these wet weather conditions, not the easiest task, especially with the spray that you'll have pop up for you. So we'll go on board with Van Bergen and get an idea for how this battle looks from where he's sitting. You can see the McLaren of Van Laar running a bit wide there. Getting out of the spray and into the chicane goes Van Bergen. Still chasing down the McLaren for this P11 overall, but Van Bergen, he's already leading the way for the amateur class. You can see ahead of all those other red number plates on the left-hand side. That timing tower gives you a good idea of everything going on here. And the gap from Vanderlot to Niehoff opened up by about 0.5 of a second there for that P7, P6 position. And no battle closer on track right now than the one we're watching as they come through the start-finish line at a 0.5 discrepancy between the two. Van Bergen has to be careful here. Doesn't want to risk too much because he's got a 7-second gap opened up with 12 minutes to go here. You would need some insane pace to close that from Maren Dijkstra. As we've now watched this battle for a lap, now you can see everything kind of staying steady. A lap ago, it was a 52.1 from Van Bergen and a 52.2 from Van Laar. And into the horseshoe they go now. This is where I've seen the McLaren ahead have some issues, but this time it looks like the issues belong to the AMG as he's able to rejoin safely there, but definitely lost some time through that corner as he ran wide and was unable to collect the car, or able to collect the car without too much loss there. Parnell closing in as well on the driver ahead. That's Maren Dijkstra in the McLaren. So look out for this. This is a battle for P2 in the amateur class right now. We got the Aston Martin going around the outside into the final two corners at the moment. And taking a more racy line through there into the final corner we go. And it's the Aston Martin side by side with the McLaren and gets closed off there. On the corner exit, this gap is going to be, it says 0.7, but much closer than that it appears. Though we'll cross the start-finish line and get a better idea for how this battle has shaped up. It's 0.6 now. Up front, it's Till Vornum chasing down Vincent Erbrick with Lee Taylor in P3, top 3 overall. The only 3 drivers from the pro class in today's race, a lot of them taking part in an endurance race, I believe, from what I saw. See the top 3 really just racing at their own pace here. It's still just 2 seconds separating Till Vornum down to Lee Taylor, though, for P2 overall. That gap, though, to Erbrick nearing the 8-second mark, 10 laps in. And look at this, Lucas Vanderlot side by side there with a Ferrari. That's because he had a major incident and went off there. Just caught it on the timing tower at the last second. Somewhere in this Sector 3, there's a massive off for Vanderlot. It's showing P6 still, but he's dropped all the way down to P10 at the moment and is behind Chris Thornton. Everyone up there gets promoted as well, and must have been through the chicane. Was an issue for Vanderlot. Now finds himself in P10, just ahead of Max Van Laar. Maren Dijkstra still being hunted down here by Peter Parnell. This gap just 0.7 of a second, as we're now under the 10-minute mark left in this first sprint race of 2 today. Everywhere on the grid is kind of opened up a significant gap. We'll see if Vandelot, just being a little bit out of position here, will be able to close in on Chris Thornton, though all of these drivers are very competitive in this top 10. So we'll see if he's able to close that gap and be able to get through and gain a couple of positions. Remember, it was up into that P6 position, lost 4 of them after an incident a lap ago. Maren Dijkstra right now, P13, and still has Parnell to worry about. Cohen Hay sitting P4, but P1 in the silver class. The 888 BMW has been leading from this silver pole position as well, and still holding off Tunin, who's managed to close that gap. A little over 1.5 seconds with 7.5 minutes to go here. And closes it once again. So 0.7 quicker that lap was Tunin. You never know if that's more Cohen Hay or Tunin controlling that pace. There's already an improvement on this lap from Cohen Hay. We'll see how that manages to fare towards the last couple of laps here. 12 laps in. And here's your race leader. So we take a ride on the passenger seat. We're on top of the airbag there. With Vincent Erbrick, who's leading the way from Till Vornum. That gap from Till Vornum down to Lee Taylor has opened up a little bit. Back over 2 seconds. Hasn't been there for a while. And who else right now is there to keep an eye on? Vandelot. Lost a second already on this lap. Till Vornum has lost time as well. And this gap has gotten much closer than it was a few corners ago. Look at that. It's Lee Taylor all over the rear wing of Till Vornum for this P2 overall position with just 6 minutes to go in this race here at Imola. We now have a battle for P2, it seems. And these wet weather conditions will clearly contribute to some of these mishaps throughout. And let's see what this gap is across the line. Looks like about a second. No, maybe a little bit over. Oh, just under a second. 9/10 is Lee Taylor from Till Vornum here for this P2 overall position. And don't want to miss any of this action up front, but I see Parnell closing in on Maren Dijkstra into the final corner. So keep an eye on that battle as we still have 2 of the race leaders up here battling for position. Let's see now as they head down the start-finish straight. No need to go in the pits in this 30-minute sprint race, but look at this pace that the Aston Martin has on the McLaren. Is it going to be enough to challenge for position here? Not into turn number 1, it's not. And going through the twisty bits now, it's 2/10 separating Maren Dijkstra and Peter Parnell. And here goes Parnell, sending it up the inside. Not just yet. Gets shut out at the last moment by the McLaren 720 to hold off for that P13 overall position. And it looks like Parnell's getting quite racy here. Wants to be able to get through. Vornum's opened up the gap a little bit to Lee Taylor there. But this gap has definitely closed as we see the Aston Martin all over the rear wing of that McLaren. Down where we've seen a couple overtakes actually into this corner and drivers running wide, which other competitors have taken advantage of and been able to improve on their position in this race. Right now, watching through the rear wing of Maren Dijkstra in P13, trying to hold off Parnell, taking 2 different lines into that chicane, and it just looks like it's a draw throughout. Difficult to tell who made out better with that one. Up front, it's still Vincent Erbrick leading the way from Till Vornum to Lee Taylor. Vornum and Taylor are about a second and a half now after they were under a second a lap ago, but Vornum was back into the 49s and set his fastest lap of the race on the previous lap. And here we have Parnell sending it up the inside there. They're going to be side by side into the first corner, and it's going to be Parnell through. And trying to make the overtake back was the McLaren of Dijkstra, not able to push through there, and now is run wide after getting a little bit loosey-goosey on the rear. And Parnell grabs that P13 position. Didn't look like anything naughty to me. Looked like good, hard, clean racing there. As Parnell finally was able to get through there with some brilliant defending from Dijkstra, just held off Parnell for a couple of laps. Back up to this battle. It's Till Vornum leading the way from Lee Taylor for this P2 position. And 2.5 minutes to go here, so we'll have a couple more laps in this race, as each lap's taking about 1 minute and 50 seconds. And Urbrick had just crossed the line now, so 2 more laps to go. And how is this gap? It's opened up once again, as has the gap to the leader. It's 11 seconds now, Urbrick ahead on board with the leader at the moment. This AMG Mercedes has been dominant here, as well as it's leading not only the pro class, but the amateur class down there. P12 overall is the leader. Ooh, and who's that dropping down? Is that Kalle Niehoff? In P8. Somebody was dropping down a position there. Difficult to tell who it was. And I believe it was Kalle Niehoff, as that lap was about 6 seconds slower than his best lap. Uncharacteristic there for the BMW driver. And it looks like we're approaching the final lap of the race. As you can see on the right-hand side of the screen, you'll see the map for the 33 car. The triangle that you see there is your race leader. As we have the number 20 car going into the pits. Or no, am I missing something? Is that the safety car? No, it's Stagno Navarra. Into the pits here. So an incident for the Aston Martin driver has forced him into the pits. That will promote Kenward and Sasha up the order. A 58.7, it wasn't a horrendously slow lap. So the leader, Vincent Urbrick, 16 laps into this race. We'll do a total of 16 laps here. On the final lap now. And it's Vincent Urbrick leading the way from start to finish so far, but still a little bit of time to go here. You never know. On the final lap, there could be any number of things that happens. This is where my timing tower gets a little bit messed up because of the driver in the pits. It's going to look like drivers are closer to competing with the car in front than maybe they truly are. The one benefit of today's race, though, is I don't believe any lap drivers, though. Vincent Urbrick is closing in on Sasha Ruppel in that P17 position. I'm sure Sasha probably wants him to get by, so his race will be over. But Sasha had a great start to this race. Jumped all the way up to around P13 or so from last on the grid. But it's all for naught at the moment. As Harvey comes across the line there, we are in white flag conditions now. Final lap of the race. It's Till Vornum still here in P2, ahead of Lee Taylor for that P3 position. And how about Cohen Hay? Still leading the way for the silver class here. P4 overall as well. Just 8 seconds off of the pro class drivers in P1 through 3. And leading the amateur class, it's Peter Parnell. As we saw him battling with Maren Dijkstra here. And Jasper Van Bergen, who was leading the way for most of the race, has really dropped down. And we'll tune back in with Urbrick as he crosses the line there and wins the first of 2 sprint races here in Imola for P PCDC Motorsports. Here comes Till Vornum across the line, will lead the way from Lee Taylor and into the wall as well. Cohen Hay will be the next driver to cross the line and seems to be slowing down at least marginally there. And the Lexus closing in. Is the Lexus going to get through here across the line? No, that was a bit further up the road as here comes Casper. He finishes in P6. Niehoff in P8 with Pruka in P7. Chris Thornton, next driver across the line, finishes P9. Lucas Vandelot, who was looking to finish a few positions up here, is dropped to P10. Look for an improvement next race. As Parnell will be the first of the amateur drivers to be able to cross the line here. And Parnell will win for the amateur class, P12 overall here in Imola, just ahead of Maren Dijkstra, who finishes P2 in the amateur class. Rounding out the podium there is going to be Jasper Van Bergen, who looked to be on for a race win in the amateur class until an issue saw him drop down the order. Andrew Harvey finishes P15 with Paul Kenward. The next driver to cross the line here will finish P16. Sasha will be your final driver to finish today due to Stagno Nevada in the pits. And remember, this is the end of the first race with the second qualifying race coming up in, I believe, 5 minutes. I think we're going to start that at the top of the hour here. So across the line goes Sasha Ruppel. Good enough for P17 in today's race. So up front, Vincent Erbrick wins the first of 2 races here today with Vornum and Lee Taylor on the podium there for the pro class. Cohen Hay finishes P1 in the silver class, P4 overall, followed up by Tunin and Errold on the podium as well. Dropping all the way down to P12 overall, you'll find your winner from the amateur class. It's Peter Parnell, followed up by Maren Dijkstra and Jasper Van Bergen for the podium in that amateur class. All right, I'm going to take a quick break as we get ready for the second stint today. Remember, another set of qualifying and race will be live in just a couple moments. All right, everybody, we're back here for qualifying number 2 on the day. It's round number 7 at Imola. Again, qualifying 2 for race number 2. So we've had the first one out of the way here. It's still wet weather conditions for these drivers, and something they've been aware of, but I'm not sure they'll be happy about. This wet weather always brings some interesting flair to the race, and we just saw about an hour ago as we started race number 1, or qualifying number 1, into the race, though Vincent Urbrick was able to lead from start to finish in that race given the wet weather conditions. A few drivers we saw go off, and it appeared that these conditions were the reason for that. Still racing up front here, though, is Max Van Laar and Cohen Hayes. They're now setting their first hot laps of today's race. That's why I'm on board with them at the moment, as Cohen Hayes was able to take the race win there for the silver class, and maybe Max Van Laar wanted to get out at the same time and see what he's able to do to compete with the driver that qualified in P4 overall and finished P4 overall behind all of the pro class drivers. Let's go on board with Cohen Hay right now and see how he's managing so far. Just 40 seconds into his lap. Take a look at that in the bottom left. Track conditions look a little bit better than they did in the last qualifying, though I'm sure they're the same. It just looks ever so slightly different as we go around this time. Might be due to less spray that we're seeing, due to drivers not being as close in this qualifying, though. Take a look at the map there. If I move down to, what's that, about Vanderlot, all these drivers right near one another. Even down into Casper Arold's area, just ahead of him is where you're going to see drivers all within a corner of one another. Cohen Hay, though, he's going to be your first driver to set a marker time, so we'll stay on board at the moment to see where he's going to end up in this 888 BMW. As he hits the 140 mark and crosses through the pit entry, it's going to be into the 150s, I presume. Oh, it's a 150-0 for Cohen Hay. A nice lap there for the BMW driver as Max Van Laar comes through now, but it looks like his lap didn't count. I wonder what happened there as Maren Dijkstra is fighting through here. Vornum and Urbrick set a lap time. Urbrick on pole position at the moment with a 49-0. Dijkstra, another driver, to set an invalid lap time. Not making it easy on me to keep an eye on that. There's Jasper Van Bergen, P3 in the amateur class. Stagno, Nevada. What a recovery for him after he DNF'd from the last race in the pits. It's going to be Matthew in P1 overall at the moment or P1 for the amateur class, not overall. Although Peter Parnell, who was able to win last race, grabs that provisional pole position, and there's a ton of movement right now, trying to keep track of all of it. Up front, though, Vincent Urbrick sets one lap, says that's good enough, a 49.030, with Lee Taylor hot on his heels, though. He's got to be careful with that. Under 5 minutes left in qualifying here. He's got him just under 2/10 behind, with Till Vornum only 3/10 off the pace as well. How about Simon Tunen, though, or Simon Tunen, apologies. Under a second behind the pole sitter in this race. Tunen had a very quiet, good race in race number 1 here. To be able to, I think, grab P5 in that race. I think it was for the Lexus driver, or roundabout. He was in the middle of the pack there, of the top 10. Cohen Hay, though, is improving right now. Looks to be a bit quicker than Tunen at the moment. Here he is across the line, and that's good enough for pole position. Just 4/10 clear of Vincent Urbrick. So all drivers improving throughout the laps right now. And let's see, who are our massive improvements? It looks like Callie Niehoff and Jasper Van Bergen are two to keep an eye on board with Van Bergen right now as he goes through the final couple of corners. And there he is on the exit of the final corner. He is over 2 seconds up on his time, and that's exactly what he needs to get further up the grid here. Is this going to be able to challenge Parnell, though? And it is. It's good enough for provisional pole position in the amateur class. The 83 AMG grabs that position now and back up towards the front. Vornum ever so close. And there's Lee Taylor as he crosses the line, is able to grab that pole position from Vincent Erbrick. We're only going to have a couple more laps of qualifying here, and Erbrick is back out on track to try and retake that pole position that Lee Taylor just snuck away from him. 1 second improvement right now for Matthew Stagno, Nevada. P12 at the moment. If he holds on to this, he would fly up the order. A blistering first sector sees Stagno, Nevada a second up on his time, and that would move him all the way up into P6 overall. But it looks like he lost a few tenths there. He's still competing for that pole position in the amateur class, though. Peter Parnell's got something to say about that as he's a bit further back on this lap, and he's improving already. You got to carry it through all 3 sectors, though, for it to matter in the end. So there's Nevada coming through the chicane now on the exit. He's over a second up on his time. Could we see Nevada move into the middle of the silver drivers there in the mid-top 10? He's in P12 right now, and into the final 2 corners we go. Let's stay on board with this driver as he's massively improved on this lap time. A driver that wasn't able to finish last race, 2 minutes left in qualifying, and he's improving massively right now. A second up on his time and coming towards the start-finish line is Stagno Navarro from P14 all the way up into P6. A blisteringly quick lap time for the amateur driver. Sees him post a 1:49.7. And that's good enough for P6 overall, ahead of most of the silver drivers. And where's Parnell at? He's 2 tenths up right now. He's still well in the sights to grab that P1, but it's not going to be good enough right now. Moves up into P10 overall. Look out for Lucas Vandelot setting a quick lap time right now. He sits in P2 of the silver class, P5 overall. He's 5 tenths down. Half a second from Cohen Hay, and he's up 3 tenths through the first sector here. So we'll see how that fares towards the end. As here's Vincent Erbrick coming through the 3rd sector, and he's going to be 3 tenths off of Lee Taylor, but only 2 tenths up on this lap. He's still got another lap after this one, though, so we'll see if this lap isn't enough. Will Vincent Erbrick be able to make it 2 out of 2 for pole position? No, he backs out of it, or had an issue there. Erbrick back? Maybe getting a better launch? Though doesn't that invalidate you for the next lap, I wonder? As he crosses the line there. Erbrick still P2. What else do we have going on? Casper Arlt here, sitting P3 in the silver class, P7 overall. Into the 3rd sector, finds himself up about a half second right now. Where would that throw him? That would throw him up towards P2. But that lap from Cohen Hay there, competing with the pro drivers. Just a fast lap time there from the BMW driver of the silver class. He's half a second clear of the next closest silver driver. Casper Arlt into the final 2 corners now he goes. As we see some drivers enter the pits here, will he be able to unseat Stagno Nevada from his P6 overall position, which is still P1 in that amateur class? A bit more parity on the grid this time around, and here is Casper racing towards the finish line. What's he able to post here as qualifying rounds out? Good enough for P2 in the silver class, P5 overall. Definitely a different grid here today as we see some drivers finishing up. Vornum's into the pits, Taylor's into the pits. And where's Erbrick right now? Erbrick is improving massively on his time. Sandbagging a little bit, I presume, through the first bits of qualifying because he is about 3 tenths clear of where he needs to be for this lap. He's headed towards a 1:48.3 or something along those lines, and he only needs a 1:48.6. Oh, and he backs out of it. Must be listening to me, Vincent, and if you are, I'm going to find out. If you backed out of that lap on purpose, I'm going to be upset about that one as we don't have any drivers improving right now, so at the moment, it's going to be Lee Taylor on pole position in the pro class with Cohen Hay pole position in the silver class and Stagno Nevada pole position in the amateur class. Not just pole position in the amateur class, but P7 to start this race. Martin Pruka, a driver who hasn't set a lap in qualifying here, seems himself in P17 and will cross the line here. And where did he just went P2 overall? Martin Pruka goes from no valid lap time to P2 overall in this qualifying session. And wow, what a lap there for the Lexus driver. So we'll go over that order as we get into the race here in a moment's time. Take another quick break and be right back with the start of race number 2 for the day. All right, hello and welcome everybody back here for race number 2. And it's round number 7 at Imola that brings us another great bout here in the wet weather conditions. It's Lee Taylor this time on pole position with Martin Pruka qualifying not only pole position for the silver class, but P2 overall in this race. A great qualifying from him. Sees him challenging for the race lead off the start. Till Vornum in P3 overall with Cohen Hay in P4, though I'm not able to switch over to the P4 driver at the moment, so hopefully that corrects itself, as it seems we've lost Vincent Erbrick at the start of this race. I hope to see him join us back, as he won the first race by a sizable margin there. It's Lucas Vandelot in P5 right now with Casper Arnold in P6. Matthew Stagno-Navarra in P7 with Maren Dijkstra in P8 overall. By the way, Stagno-Navarra grabs that pole position for the amateur class. Kalle Niehoff P9 overall with Simon Tunin in P10. Max van Laar P11 with Peter Parnell in P12. Jasper Van Bergen in P13 overall with Chris Thornton in P14. Andrew Harvey grabs that 15th position, followed up by Sasha Ruppel and Paul Kenward. We did have 18 drivers in here. The one disconnect so far is Vincent Erbrick. Doesn't look like he's going to be able to join us back here. Didn't see any comment about something going on for the AMG driver, but clearly not with us for this race. It appears as Lee Taylor will take this pole position, and this grid is entirely different. Oh, and Vincent's letting us know the wheel disconnected. So unfortunate there, as I wanted to see that AMG absolutely rip around this track for the second time today. A 30-minute race here always brings some exciting battles, especially early on. But Martin Pruka there with Till Vornum. Vornum was able to finish P2 overall last race, and a little over a second ahead of Lee Taylor, who starts this race in P1. So now it will be Taylor doing the defending early on. Cohen Hay P4, that's where he's been literally all day. Qualified P4 in both races, finished race 1 in P4, and starts this race in P4. So as the drivers round the final corner to get ready for this rolling start here in Imola with Martin Pruka in P2. Wow, just a great qualifying. Sees him challenging for a race lead here. I'm trying to find my beverage before this race start. There we go. As I'm sure these drivers are all hydrated and ready to go as we get ready for race number 2 in Imola. And we have green light conditions. We are underway once again here. Till Vornum trying to get the best run he can, possibly up the inside with Martin Pruka around the outside there, though it looks like Vornum must have braked early. As we see the drivers go into turn number 1, a little bit of movement, but most drivers, as always here in PCDC, staying as clean as possible. That looks like Lucas Vandelot and an Aston Martin of Stagno-Navarra going side by side there. And we got a McLaren sneaking his way through. I think that's Maren Dijkstra. One of the Dijkstra brothers here with us today in this race. As we have an Aston Martin going wide there as well. So a ton of early fighting. Let's switch back up to the front and see what kind of gap we got going on. It's Lee Taylor through the first sector. He's going to be 6/10 clear of Martin Pruka. Martin Pruka quickly being challenged by the Lamborghini of Till Vornum. And Vornum not sending it up the inside just yet, but I'm sure wants to be able to get through here to chase down that driver for P1, Lee Taylor. Back here, it's Cohen Hay, who was overtaken by the Ferrari of Arnold for that P4 position, a position that is the only one Cohen Hay has known all day long. But finds himself in P5 at the moment. A ton of early battling going on. Always difficult to keep track of, so I apologize for anything I missed. But you can see all these drivers going down into the chicane, near side by side for the Mercedes and the McLaren, and jumping off the track is the Mercedes of Jasper Van Bergen. This is your battle for P2, on board with Martin Pruka over the rear wing down towards turn number 1. And it'll be a long run there for Martin Pruka to defend from the Lamborghini that is looking to get a great exit there and see what he's able to do to challenge the Lexus for this P2 position. Lee Taylor out to a 2.5 lead, just 1 lap in, 2 minutes into the race. And Van Laar dropping all the way down the order right now. Not sure what's going on with that. I think just the timing tower correcting itself. As you can see, Till Vornum still battling here with Martin Pruka. Pruka doing a brilliant job to defend right now from the Lamborghini driver, just on pure pace alone, not even track position yet, though I suspect that will come either on this lap or the next lap. As Casper Arrold here in P2 for the silver class, waiting to capitalize on any potential overtake attempt from Till Vornum. What else do we have going on? It looks like Parnell here. He's being sandwiched right now. It says between a couple of different drivers. So let's see. That's Stagno Navarra there as well, I believe, as we have 4 or 5 drivers now battling for this position. The number 53 of Parnell battling there with Chris Thornton. I know that. Oh, and there's a bit of a spinner there. The number 20 car has an off, and that was Stagno Navarra, who DNF from last race. He qualified P2 in the amateur class in this race, but now finds himself facing the wrong way. Everybody else was able to get through, it seems, as Chris Thornton is now battling with Van Laar. And is that Harby as well? And where's Van Bergen at? So was it Van Bergen and Stagno Navarra that had their issue in Sector 3 here? I believe it was. He's in P16 now. As we go on board with the race leader, it's Lee Taylor leading the way, 2 laps in so far, starting lap number 3 ahead of Martin Pruka, who's still in P2 right now. He's opened up a little bit of a gap as well to Till Vornum, so the Lexus driver, the fastest lap of the day so far, and continuing on with some brilliant pace here to compete with the Pro Class drivers. Casper Arnold here, P4, P2 in the silver class with Marin Dijkstra a bit further down, P8 overall, but he's P1 in that amateur class, and he's not yet content with that one, is he? As he's chasing down Kelly Niehoff for P7. And how about Max Van Laar? Looks to be challenging as well, though falls off of the Lexus that was able to get through. I think that's Simontunen that is ahead there now. No, it's Kelly Niehoff. Apologies. Mixed up the car manufacturers. Vandelat just a few positions ahead. This is your closest battle on track right now. It's Van Laar sandwiched between Thornton and Harby. Thornton in P11. Looking elsewhere right now, it's still Martin Pruka, your fastest driver on track at the moment. A 52.1 is his fastest lap of the race so far, though Lee Taylor was able to compete with that. It looks like he might exceed that lap time. A 51.1 now set by Lee Taylor, who opened up the gap by a second on the last lap. Was a 52.3 was then set by Martin Pruka. So that's a second and some change difference between P1 and P2. Just a few laps in here. Till Vornum still P3 in this race with Casper Arnold in P4. Lucas Vandelat has Kalle Niehoff to worry about as well. The number 23 car in that P7 position. Vandelat back up where he feels he belongs after he had that mishap in race number 1 that saw him drop from P6 down to P10. He's back up into that position and has Cohen Hay to worry about in front. Cohen has other things on his mind, including P4 in this race, which is only good enough for P2 overall in the silver class. So a lot of battling still to be done here, as it seems the racing is much closer this time around in Imola. Everybody else settled into position pretty early on in race number 1, but race number 2 here, I think we're still going to see a lot of movement with 23 minutes to go here in Italy. Here's on board with Casper Arnold and Cohen Hay. Cohen Hay closing in for that P2 position in silver class. Can't quite get there yet. But look at that pace that BMW has on the exit. He's staying right over the rear wing of the Ferrari in P4. As I do truly love the camera angles that ACC is able to give us here, as we have a little bit of a wide run there for the Ferrari, but that's going to set him up nicely for the exit of the final corner, and maybe that's exactly what he was looking for, as he needed to open up that gap a little bit to Cohen Hay, and seems he's done just that. It was 5/10 at the start of Sector 3. How about Sector 1 now as we cross the start-finish? It's 4/10. So advantage Cohen Hay through that final sector there, and a bit quicker on the lap as well. Up front, Lee Taylor has widened that gap by a decent margin. Martin Pruka, 3 seconds off the rear of Lee for P1 overall. Till Vornum, he's lost out some time as well, over a second and a half behind. Still some good battling here as Lucas Van der Lop is ahead of Kalle Niehoff by about half a second as it stands. Max Van Laar currently sitting P12 in this race. That's Andrew Harvey behind in the AMG Mercedes. Ran a bit of a different line there, a bit of a unique line. And Harvey in one of the 2 AMGs that are with us for this race, the other being Jasper Van Bergen. If you watched race 1 and are wondering where Vincent Erbrick is at, had a bit of a wheel disconnect issue and not able to participate here after qualifying well within the top 5 for this race and qualified on pole for race number 1. He's going to end up with no points here, which is a bit unfortunate for a driver that showed up, and I think that's a bit of an understatement. See who else is battling at the moment. Van der Lop closing in on Arnold, as is Niehoff on Van der Lop. So some good battling right now for this P5 position, as Cohen Hay was promoted to P4. Apologies for missing that one. Still better than Formula 1 production, though, I promise. And looking over the rear now of the BMW, being chased down by a BMW. You have Van der Lop leading Niehoff down into turn number 1. And this gap, your closest you're going to find on the field right now. Into turn 1 we go. And it's still Van der Lop leading from Niehoff there in P7. Who else do we have going at it right now? Looks like Maren Dijkstra having to worry about Toonen for P8 in this race. Dijkstra is leading the way for the amateur class, but that silver class driver in the Lexus, Toonen, is looking to get through here and battle into the top 5 of the silver drivers. You can see just very different lines there through that corner. Almost cost the Lexus some time. Seems just a bit racier going into Sector 2. See early braking there from the McLaren. It's so much later from the Lexus, and maybe it'd be a good time for Dijkstra to follow Toonen as well. It might just be some different routes they're taking here because of the wet weather conditions, not used to the braking points. Still some good competition going on, though, between 2 drivers in separate classes. So you have the Lexus just getting over a bit earlier, and this will give him an earlier exit, but you can see a little bit of oversteer there cost him on the exit, and Dijkstra will still be leading the way there and actually open up that gap a little bit as he chases down towards the final 2 corners now. Arnold has a massive issue here for the Ferrari and is overtaken by Lucas Van der Lot, and there's contact between the two. Niehoff looking to capitalize on this as well. Does he have a good enough run to get through on the Ferrari here? It's 2 BMWs, 1 Ferrari. And no, that's not a skit, I promise. As the BMW's up the inside there, that is Kalle Niehoff trying to get through on Kasper Arlt as we have some movement now on the grid. Almost at the halfway mark through turn number 1, they go, and it's still Kasper leading from Kalle. Van der Lot was able to get clear of that and wants to get away from this battle as soon as he possibly can to try and widen that gap to the BMW behind that was pressuring him for so long through the early portions of this race. But look at that, a little bit of a mistake from Van der Lot. Sees the Ferrari of Kasper Arlt go around the outside here. Oh, and there's contact between the two. And they seem to have corrected that action as the Ferrari is now back in the lead of this battle. Though Van der Lot's not done with that just yet, is he? He wants to sneak up the inside here if possible into the corner. Knows he doesn't have enough on the Ferrari for the entry. But how about the exit? Into the next corner they go. And still nearing side-by-side conditions. Not quite, but right there for these three. Oh, and the Ferrari runs way wide there. And 2 BMWs are able to get through. He's got to look out for the McLaren and the Lexus as well behind that are able to come through and rejoins the track. And there's contact. The McLaren of Dijkstra made contact with the Ferrari just as there was a rejoin there. And something tells me the stewards are going to have a look at that one to determine who may have been at fault for the incident there. Some entertaining battling going on here just 13 minutes into this race. Van der Lot up at the P6 with Kalle Niehoff in P7. These two drivers promoted through Kasper Arlt's, I'd call it his mistake. It didn't look like there was any contact there that caused him to go off. And of course, there could be any number of circumstances. You never know if it's a driver trying to give back a position, but here's Van der Lot and Niehoff not done battling just yet. It's Niehoff around the outside, which becomes the inside here. We'll see how they go into turn number 2. It's still going to be neck and neck between the two drivers for P5 and P6, but this is the final podium position for the silver class they're battling for as well, and everybody wants a taste of that champagne. Of course, here in Italy, taste even sweeter. Or Moretti, if you enjoy a nice lager. I think I was able to save that replay there. It's difficult. I apologize, trying to switch between and save replays as well. So let's see what we had. Yeah, this is what happened here. It was Kasper going off there. It was almost like he hit one of those slowdown bumps from, you remember the old school Forza Motorsport? Where you'd have drivers go off and slow down massively. That's kind of what that looked like. So we'll see the replay here once again. You have Kasper run wide and then almost turn out of it. So maybe a wheel issue as well, it seems. We'll just watch it one more time because that contact on the exit I want to focus on this time around. The live battle's going on in the bottom left. And I want to watch the rejoin here. Where do we see? That's Dijkstra coming through. Oh, yeah, and there's contact, but tell you what, Arlt has the worst of that contact as well, so I don't think Dijkstra did anything wrong there, and Arlt just may not saw him because, you know, with the double corner there, it's difficult to see the driver behind him, sure, so I was on board with Till Vornum there. He was closing the lap, or the gap, I apologize, to Martin Pruko for P2. It's opened up back to over a second right now. Further down the order, this battle right now, it's Dijkstra leading the way for the amateur class, but that's Parnell as well as Chris Thornton there. Parnell being the driver in the same class to look out for. See him closing in there. So Parnell won race number 1, I believe, in that Aston. Let's see if he's able to make it 2 for 2 here as he chases down Maren Dijkstra, who I don't know if Dijkstra picked up any damage from that slight contact. It was very slight between the two. It was There's a Ferrari running wide. That was Chris Thornton, just caught out by the braking zone. And like I said, it was very slight contact between Arnold. Oh, and there's a Lexus off there as well. And that's the Lexus of Toonen, who's going to drop a few positions here. And two drivers able to get through. That's Dijkstra and Parnell getting through for the time being. And again, Toonen has a little bit of a moment there through the chicane. Collects it nicely, though, and continues on with his race. Though he's got to worry about a driver behind. That's Chris Thornton hunting him down. And now running off the track is Chris Thornton in the 420 Blaze It car. We go on board with Peter Parnell. This is the view you get if you're hunting down a McLaren for P1 in your class in this race. It's Maren Dijkstra leading Peter Parnell. Down into turn number 1 they go. And everything's kosher between the two there. By the way, Lee Taylor leading the race well over the halfway mark in this race and 4.5 seconds clear of Martin Pruka. Martin, though, is not satisfied, it seems, just yet with P2 overall in this race, P1 in silver class, but he wants to chase down Lee Taylor as they have 12 minutes to go here. Till Vornum pushing the driver ahead as well, and I'm sure Taylor and Vornum are happy with today's circumstances. The only two in the race. Oh, and there's Vornum getting a little bit excited as well, giving us some action. A little bit of drift action going on for Till Vornum. So make sure to watch that one back. But collects the Lambo nicely and definitely lost out about 1.5 seconds there due to that issue. And he might have to worry about Cohen Hay behind as well. Cohen Hay not too far off the pace here. He could be battling for position shortly. Parnell 7/10 off Maren Dijkstra for P1 in this amateur class, P7 overall. And Toonen there was able to collect himself nicely and get back under race pace quickly. Be able to battle back for position here. The podium will not be full for the pro class. Thank you for that one, Vincent, as he had a nice wheel disconnect there. Absolutely love that. It will be Lee Taylor and Vornum as long as they can finish the race. Ending up on the podium. And if my dog barks in a moment's time, I apologize for that as I'm having some food delivered. That would just make it 2 out of 2 weeks where we have some dogs barking here. But Peter Parnell, less than 0.5 second behind Maren Dijkstra for this P1 in amateur class. Apparently not satisfied with just one race win for the day. Wants to make it 2. But Maren Dijkstra might have something to say about that as they're still competing here with 10 minutes to go in this race, and the two could not be closer as a better exit there for Maren Dijkstra sees the McLaren driver stay ahead for P1 in the amateur class. And Peter Pineapple Grips here doing the best to get a grip on these tires and sneak up into P1. Is he able to do it, though? That's what's most important. As we had, I think the Lexus, was that Toonen again running wide there? It was. A little bit of an issue for Toonen. Stay on board with Mr. Pineapple Grips as right on cue my dog starts barking. I love it. Apologies for that. I'll mute for a moment. Yeah, sorry for that one. He's going to bark a couple more times here because he loves to distract whenever we have a nice stream going and a nice race, but especially a nice battle between the Fanatec-sponsored Aston Martin and the McLaren. Down into turn number 1 we go once again. So I apologize there for the final time of hopefully the dog has figured it out now. We still have a four-way battle now for this position. It's Martin Pruka in P2 with Lee Taylor in P1 in this race. Till Vornum has fallen off the pace a bit for P3 with Cohen Hay in P2 for the silver class, but P4 overall. We're watching the battle for the race lead right now. In the amateur class, it's Marin Dijkstra and Peter Parnell. 4/10 separate these two drivers. As you can also see Toonen and Thornton from the silver class just behind this battle. And into the chicane they go. The Aston Martin definitely closing in on that McLaren, but is it enough to get through just yet? Let's switch back to the rear wing of Peter Parnell and see what he has to worry about. Is sponsored by ACC, it seems. Good sponsors there going for Peter. That Lexus of Simon Toonen looking very racy late in this one. And from attack to defend for Peter Parnell, all of a sudden, he's got the prickly Simon Toonen closing in and looking for an overtake here down at the turn number 1. A nice slipstream, nice draft gives him that advantage into the braking zone, and it looks like Toonen's through cleanly there. And Parnell's hoping maybe they'll get through the next driver as well and be able to back him up a little bit into this battle as we go amateur silver right now. And here comes the Aston Martin trying to close in there. Oh, and there's an issue for the Lexus of Simon Toonen. And did he gain an advantage from rejoining there? It doesn't matter at the moment because he's lost that position. And a bit of an off there for Simon Toonen. Has seen him lose out for that P7 overall position. I want to switch over and see what else is going on, but I don't want to miss out on any of these potential overtakes because there's been such good battling going on here for this P7. The four-way battle, as it starts to open up a little bit. Thornton was able to get through on Parnell there as well, and here is the silver driver of Toonen trying to get through on Dijkstra. Can't do so just yet, but this might be a good run down into the final corner as we see him exit the chicane here. It's the Lexus chasing down the McLaren this time around. And close once again between the two, and it's like missing the apex there possibly, though the car that I thought hit the apex, the number 12 Lexus, lost the rear a little bit into the sand trap. The bunker, if you will. By the way, there are other drivers on the grid. We've been on board with that battle for a few laps now. Up front, it's Lee Taylor still leading the way here. 5 minutes to go in race number 2 around Imola. And he's opened up a 5-second gap to Martin Pruka. Almost looks closer than 5 seconds, though. As Till Vornum just 2 seconds behind Martin Pruka, and he has set the fastest lap of the race so far, though any improvement seems to be for naught at the moment because 7 seconds is the gap between P1 to P3. Cohen Hay, he's going to be in P4 at the moment, and good race from him once again to be in the position that he feels he belongs in. And we switch back down to this battle. Lucas Van der Lott and Callie Niehoff are there as well in the top 10, though not truly too close to one another to cause any issues. Here's the Lexus once again getting a bit drifty there. And Toonen absolutely flying around the circuit right now, almost too quick for his own good. All over the rear wing of the McLaren. Is he going to make an attempt down into the chicane here? This would be a surprising overtake, but let's see as the McLaren takes the defensive line there and backs up the cars a little bit. The Lexus is going to have a nice run here, nearing side-by-side conditions for the two. For P7 overall, Toonen gets up the inside, down into the final 2 corners now. He's going to have at least a position on track. And let's see, he does get through there on the McLaren. Will the McLaren fight back at all, though, into the final corner? He doesn't. Backs out of it. He's got Chris Thornton to worry about now behind, who's able to get a better run out of this final corner and will be able to pressure him all the way down into turn number 1. Some nice battling we have going on here for P7 it has become. I just want to take a look here and see if Thornton's able to pressure Dijkstra into turn 1. Not close enough just yet. Doesn't look like any changes at the moment. How about Casper Arold, though? He's battling with Max van Laar for P11 as it stands. Stagno Navarro right here as well. He's P3 in the amateur class, and he's being hunted down by Andrew Harvey for that position. It's P13 overall. With Jasper Van Bergen all the way down in P15. I'm stunned by this one because a driver that was looking so quick through race number 1 is now down in P15. Paul Kenward in P16 with Sasha Ruppel in the pits. This is your battle for P2 now. Just about a second separating these two as they come through sector number 3 for about the 14th time today. We should do 16 laps once again here, so a couple of laps to go. With 2.5 minutes to go here, we'll see us finish out the second race. It's been a fun one, too, to watch along here as these guys have battled quite a bit throughout the whole grid, but really through the last few laps, the battling's been back here for this P7 position that Toonen has finally grabbed, but Thornton was able to get through there on Dijkstra as well, managed to miss that one. So Toonen just ahead of Thornton here, and Dijkstra now has to worry about the lead for the amateur class, as Parnell definitely well within striking distance. As we are on the penultimate lap now, I believe. Max van Laar close as well to Casper Arold here. Let's see. As they go down into turn number 1, look out for this battle to continue heating up. Andrew Harvey able to get through on Matthew Stagno Navarro here. Down into turn number 1 they go again. And nice defensive positioning there from the Mercedes. Sees him stay ahead. The AMG doing everything in his power to hold on to that position. And he does just so through sector 1 so far. As they enter sector number 2, it's going to be Mercedes followed by Aston Martin. Here's your top 3 for the day. Lee Taylor, we saw just go through there. He's 6 seconds clear of Martin Pruka, who's having a brilliant race here for the silver class leaders. Till Vornum, just a second behind here. He has been quicker pretty much every lap through the last 5 or so, but it's only been marginally. So good consistency from these two. This is your battle for the race lead in amateur class.
Okay, your leader is on the final lap now. Give it all you can.
And on board with Lee Taylor, who again has not gotten the screen time that he deserves, but Vincent Erbrick had felt that pain a race ago because he dominated up front, as has Lee Taylor this race, and domination leads to not as much screen time, so apologies for that one. But you should never apologize for some quick, clean racing up here. As Martin Pruka still being closed in on by Till Vornum. Will we see any final lunge? I don't know just yet. Here's Kalle Niehoff and Lucas Vanderlot going at it on the last lap of this race. This is for P3 in the silver class. We have Vanderlot in that position at the moment, but Niehoff is trying to make it his. Just 1/10 separates the two. Niehoff showing the nose up the inside. Gets out of it. Gets a little bit squirrely there into the next 2 corners. And we'll lose some time from that one. Close battle between those two. Here's Max van Laar battling with Arold as well. Let's see, will we see a potential overtake here? Not showing the position just yet. How about this battle, though? This is for P2 overall in this race. Martin Pruka still leading the way for the silver class. Will be ahead of Till Vornum down into the chicane once again. Here's Lucas Vanderlot and Kalle Niehoff for P3 in the silver class. So as the leader goes down through the final 2 corners now, we go on board with the battle for P2 at the moment. It's Martin Pruka into the penultimate corner now. Looks to still be ahead. Is there enough of a run for that Lamborghini to get through into P2 in this race? It's going to be a drag to the finish as Lee Taylor crosses the line and grabs the victory here in race 2. On board with the battle for P2 now, it's Martin Pruka and Till Vornum taking it across the line, and the Lexus will take P2. Martin Pruka in that position with Till Vornum in P3. Cohen, hey, a brilliant race here. Sees him finish P4, but how about this battle for P5? Another sprint to the finish. It's Lucas Vandelot finishing P3 in the silver class, P5 overall, with Callie Niehoff just finishing outside there. Simon Toonen, the next driver across the line, will finish P7 with Thornton in P8. Dijkstra grabs P9 in the race victory for the amateur class, with Parnell grabbing that P2 in the amateur class and P10 overall. Here's Max Van Laar crossing the line with Arnold, and we can see another battle to the finish there. As we take a look at the timing charts, these drivers are very close to one another as they cross the line. Andrew Harvey finishes P13 with Stagno Navarra grabbing P14. That was Harvey's podium position there as well, P3 for the amateur class. Paul Kenward will be your final driver to finish, as Van Bergen had just finished before him. And Kenward finishes P16. As you can see on the timing towers, Sasha Ruppel had retired early on, just 10 laps into this race, and Vincent Erbrick with a DNS for this one as he had a wheel disconnect there. All right, gents, thank you for joining me once again. It's been a fun race as Lee Taylor has picked up some damage now. I thank you all for joining me. Again, this is Curbsy that brought you this stream today from PCDC Motorsports, and it was a great one. A couple of nice sprint races around Imola with some different winners, different podium sitters throughout, and some great battling. So I'd just like to say thank you all for joining me, and as always, stay safe, stay happy, stay healthy, and take care, everyone. We'll be live next Saturday for the final race of the season.